All right, folks, welcome to a show we're probably calling Tales from Davy Jones' Locker, where we talk about boats and ships and fun things that happen with them. I'm here with Riley, and I've promised to try to make this as entertaining as possible. So we're talking about maybe one of the most disastrous, entertainingly disastrous. It's kind of like a train wreck you can't stop looking at.
So when you say fun, you mean like fun for us?
Fun for us. It was very bad for everyone involved, basically, but it's kind of fun to look back at, right?
Okay.
We're talking about the Russian 2nd Pacific Squadron. Topical, I know, given current events, but we're talking about the one from 1904. So hopefully it's a little less topical. But a little bit of background, I suppose, first. This takes place during the Russo-Japanese War between Japan and Russia. Why is not entirely relevant. Suffice to say, the Japanese wanted some ports, the Russians wanted some ports. Both of these ports were basically in China, and both of them really wanted them, so the Japanese had a big war with Russia over it. In this war, the Russian Pacific Fleet, which consisted of a bunch of ships that are not the 1st Pacific Squadron, I'm going to call them that this whole time, were in port, in a place called Port Arthur. Notable in Russian contexts for never fully freezing in the winter. Most of Russia's ports freeze, so they get covered in ice and you can't sail through them because the water's frozen. At least not with an icebreaker. Port Arthur didn't do that. But the Russian government had had given the Chinese some money to use Port Arthur as a naval base. And then Japan had invaded China. And Japan went, that's no longer relevant. They gave that to us. And Russia went, oh yeah, come and take it. And then they did. Now, the Russians did not expect the Japanese to come and take it, so they kind of didn't do anything. So the Japanese kind of just rocked up to Port Arthur with a bunch of their ships and sunk most of the Russian fleet in harbor, which is not good. You don't want that to happen. And the way Russia got things to the Far East at that point was a railroad, the Trans-Siberian Railway. It's big, it's important, it's really, really long, and it still exists. You can still go on it. You can still go Vladivostok to Moscow. It's like 28 hours. I wouldn't really recommend it, but you can still do it. And they can't really send battleships over the Trans-Siberian Railway. They're a bit too heavy.
Right.
And by a bit, I mean way too heavy. So they sent some army soldiers and some other stuff across the Trans-Siberian Railway, but they got to get more ships out there. So the Russian Tsar, who is Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, resolves to send a bunch of Baltic Fleet ships literally across the entire world to go fight the Japanese and get all the ships in Port Arthur out and all that stuff. In the meantime, he also sends a new guy, an Admiral Makarov, not related to the dude who invented the pistol, but the same last name, to go and take command at Port Arthur and hopefully do something. And he does send Admiral Makarov over the Trans-Siberian Railway. Now, on literally the day Admiral Makarov gets there, the port of Port Arthur is being shelled. And so Admiral Makarov steps off the train, and a piece of shrapnel the size of his head decapitates him.
Oh my gosh.
Like, he literally steps off the train and gets decapitated.
That's crazy.
And you would think maybe at that point the Russians would kind of just throw in the towel, but no. So they send someone else to go do his job in the meantime, and they keep building up this 2nd Pacific Fleet under the command of an Admiral Rozhesvensky. A little bit of some things about Admiral Rozhesvensky. Notoriously competent, really good at his job. Sailors like him, really good dude. But basically every aristocrat in Russia hates him. Hates his guts. Hates him so much. Because at the time, if you were a Russian aristocrat, so minor royalty, and you wanted your kid to serve in the military and have military honors and that kind of thing, but you didn't really want them to actually die, they went to the Navy. And a lot of these dudes, because their parents and siblings and things are aristocrats, get put in positions they probably should not be. And Admiral Ross Hezvensky was taken to immense fits of anger. And he took that anger out by beating people within an inch of their life. Like, sometimes literally within an inch of their life. So he almost kills the, grandson of one of the Tsar's cousins on a ship somewhere in the Baltic Sea. And essentially only by the intervention of the actual Tsar of Russia is he not, killed on the spot. Right, the Tsar goes, he was just doing his job. We're not going to kill him. This guy didn't actually die. He'll be fine. And Ross Hezvensky's career was only really advanced when the Tsar stepped in. So this is the Tsar stepping in and saying, hey, Ross Hezvensky, I'm going to advance your career. You're a cool guy. We need more dudes like you.
Yeah.
And sending him to go do this. Now, the actual voyage they take from Tallinn in modern-day Estonia, I believe. Don't kill me, Estonians, if I'm wrong. I believe it was basically Tallinn, to where this fleet would eventually die its final death in the Straits of Tsushima, is about as far of a naval voyage as you can go. Okay, they cross the equator 2 or 3 times. We'll get to that. Because you go, Bryan, why didn't they take the Suez Canal? We'll get there, okay? They cross the equator a couple times. They sail around the Horn of Africa. And Ross Hezvensky, kind of knowing that this was going to have to happen, pretty much does everything in his power to tell the Tsar no. In fact, he will keep trying to do that this whole time. So just keep in the back of your head, Ross Hezvensky is constantly trying to resign. He's mailing a letter every 2 weeks to the Tsar going, hey, can I resign? Hey, can I resign? Hey, can I resign? Can I send me to Siberia? I don't care. Can I get me off this ship? But the Tsar says, no, you're doing this. And being the good officer he is, Ross Hezvensky kind of just goes, okay, sure. Gets his fleet together. And then, upon getting his fleet together in the Baltic Sea, realizes he's been given 6 to 8 of the newest battleships in the Russian Navy, and a bunch of what could be charitably called geriatric, truly ancient rejects from the Baltic and the Black Sea, ships that would not be out of place in the American Civil War, and this is taking place in 1904. And he's admittedly a little unhappy about this, but the one person he can't scream at is the Tsar. So he kind of just goes, okay. So they take about a year, and then they, get it, and they go, and they leave Russia. And on their way out of Russia, the day they're going to leave, they start leaving, and then the lead ship in the column, one of the newest battleships in Imperial Russia, hits an iceberg and tears a big hole in its bow, and they have to wait 6 more months for it to be fixed. So they wait 6 more months, and now all the ice is melted, and they go to leave again. And they're leaving out, they get past Denmark, and they're now in the North Sea, which is the sea between the UK and Norway, basically. Denmark's there too. And I should briefly note, most of the sailors in the Russian Navy who had any experience at all were already in the Far East. They were already in Vladivostok or Port Arthur. Mm-hmm. So he's just got a bunch of guys, mostly random conscripts from Central Russia, many of which, before they were drafted into the Navy, had never actually seen the ocean. And now they are locked in a metal box with several thousand other men like that, one of the most angry men in all of Russia, which is saying something, and are just expected to live their lives. So pretty much immediately, as they're in the North Sea, panic sets in. And some guy on some ship loses his mind a little bit when they see the British fishing fleet, the trawler fleet, out in the North Sea catching fish. And he loses his mind and he goes, oh my god, there's a giant fleet of Japanese torpedo boats that have sailed around the world to head us off in the North Atlantic. And he kind of just starts shooting. And then one ship looks over and goes, oh my god, they're shooting, we must be being attacked, and starts shooting.
Right.
And then the entire fleet is shooting up the British trawler fleet in the Dogger Bank. And now the punchline here, you may go, Bryan, that's not very funny. They didn't hit anything.
That's even worse.
They didn't hit anything. Like, literally the entire battle fleet opens up on this random stationary group, not moving. Mm-hmm. Both sides are not moving. They open up on this stationary trawler fleet, and they don't even hit anything. This could be bad. You just shot up a bunch of British trawlermen. The British Royal Navy could probably swat you like a fly, and in fact, they come kind of close a few times, because, spoiler alert, this happens again. Again, only by the intervention of the Tsar, speaking to his cousin, the King of England, is this smoothed over. And at this point, Rozhesvensky has thrown his first set of binoculars off the ship. We're going to keep a count of that, because they get to, like, double digits of pairs of binoculars thrown off the ship. He's, like, screamed at a couple guys. He's, like, lost his mind already. And they're, like, 2 months into this. Mm-hmm. They're, like, 2 months into being at sea. So now they have to go through the English Channel, which is not great, considering you just shot up the British trawler fleet.
Right.
And the guy in charge of the British Navy, not the whole British Navy, but the British home fleet at this point, basically shadows them with a fleet of, like, 26 battleships, and he kind of just follows them around until they hit Spain. So they're being followed by the British. And then they get to about in France. They stop for coal in France. And they manage to lose a ship. It just fully goes missing. A supply ship called the Kamchatka. And we have the diary of the main engineer aboard the Kamchatka. We'll read a little bit from him in a minute. They manage to lose the Kamchatka. And so they go back out to sea and they send some guys to go find the Kamchatka. And they find it. And its first message when they find it again is, "Do you see torpedo boats?" So the fear has remained. Mm. There aren't any torpedo boats. There never were. The main consideration is, how would the Japanese get a fleet of torpedo boats from Japan to the UK in 4 months? And if they didn't, how would they build a fleet of torpedo boats in the UK in 4 months without the King of England telling his cousin the Tsar about it? Mm-hmm. Completely unfounded. And yet, this will happen like 4 times. We have the first time in Denmark, this time in the mid-Atlantic, and like twice when they're in Africa. They're going to Africa, by the way. It's around this point they also get the message they're not going to be able to use the Suez Canal because they shot up the British trawler fleet. So now they have to go around the Horn of Africa. And these are Russian ships, so they're not designed for anything hotter than about, 60, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Mm-hmm. It's like 25 Celsius.
Right.
And they're going to have to go through Africa. That'll be a bad time when we get there. So they go around Gibraltar, and we have more insanity from the Kamchatka, which once again vanishes for a little bit and then just appears next to the flagship. Like the ship Admiral Rozhesvensky is on. It just kind of shows up and starts like flashing him light signals. And now we're going to read from the diary of the engineer aboard the Kamchatka. Because he's he's pretty much insane at this point. And he's the guy basically running the ship too, because the captain's also completely lost it. And in his diary he writes, "Last night when I was going to sleep, I moved my pillow from one end of the bed to the other. And when I was going to sleep, I saw a rat on the desk that could have easily jumped from the desk to my head and bitten me had I not moved my pillow. Tomorrow I shall have to wake up and fix the boilers. I do not want to do this." And then he just stops writing. So they're going around Africa at this point. And they're getting down the Horn. And around this time, Rozhesvensky, stuff is kind of taking a toll on him. It's been like 2 or 3 months. He's kind of starting to like lose his grip on reality. And then they get to Madagascar, French Madagascar at this point, and he has a stroke. Full-on stroke. Okay? So now they're stuck in port for 2 months because the admiral of the fleet had a stroke and has to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And in their time there, they try to amuse themselves by doing the kinds of things sailors do, which is to say dumb stuff.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So one man takes to wandering around the fleet wearing nothing but a pair of shorts and a cloak, holding a Bible, and just walking around the deck and asking other sailors if they fear death. They also had to bring on low-quality coal in Madagascar. That turns into dust. And now every ship is coated in, like, coal sludge. So dudes are hacking their lungs out, going crazy and participating in religious revivals. And those are just the dudes who are stuck on the ship. Because the guys who can go on shore, mostly officers, content themselves by buying copious amounts of opium and large amounts of exotic pets. So one man bought a large snake of some variety that then got out and was just somewhere on the ship for a few days, only for it to turn up in the morning, coiled around one of the big gun barrels in the main turret, and they sent some poor private with a sword to go get it off, and before he could cut its head off, it bit him and he died.
They brought the snake on board so he could get the rats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We had to get some. Yeah, we have to get something to get rid of the rats.
Yeah,
it's also,
that's totally why they did it.
It's boarding training. The Japanese are gonna sick their fleet of snake carriers on you. Another man buys a crocodile.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone buys like 200 chameleons that also just get out and are just in the ship for this whole time after this, by the way. So you just find chameleons in the ship sometimes. I mentioned copious quantities of opium.
You sure did.
One junior officer had 2,000 opium cigarettes taken from him and thrown in the harbor. Only after he'd already given away 4,000 of them. So now half the fleet's addicted to opium, half the fleet's battling exotic African wildlife. They buy some lemurs at one point. That's kind of interesting.
That's arguably worse than than reptiles.
Yeah, they buy some lemurs, all kinds of stuff. And as you can imagine, once Rossisvensky regains consciousness from his like stroke-induced haze of like a month and a half, he is so angry. Like, so angry. To the point when they're about to leave Madagascar, one of the senior officers on the fleet that Rossisvensky like personally hates, he basically voluntells him, which is like, you're going to volunteer for this, or I'm going to like cut your head off to go back to Russia and get more forces. And so that happens right before the stroke. And so this guy, in the meantime, is coming back, and he does get to go through the Suez Canal. But he brings back an even more ancient, even more broken, and even more insane complement of ships from mostly the Black Sea, and then they meet up with them around Sri Lanka. But Rossisvensky, in the past, almost killed this guy in like a duel.
Oh, dang.
So, almost kills this guy, and now they're about to leave Madagascar. And they finally get mail from Russia. They finally get mail. And, you know, you're a sailor. You're Russian. You really don't want to be there. When you get mail, you really hope it's, like, good stuff. It's like maybe your mom sent you cake or something, right?
Yeah.
Instead, they get a notice that their pay is being docked for them being late and a bunch of winter clothing.
But they're, yeah.
Yeah, and like no actual letters. They just get like a thing from the Tsar being disappointed in them and a bunch of winter clothing.
After they've just been through Africa.
Yeah, after they're still in Africa. They're like Zanzibar at this point. And it's like, here's a big fluffy wool coat. Go put it on. So now they leave and they go to Sri Lanka. And they haven't really been shooting at anything since they shot up those British fishermen like a month and a half ago. And so now they take to doing this drill where you take aim at another ship in your line and then offset it by a known amount of degrees. And I think you can see where this is going.
Not somewhere good.
No. So they accidentally shoot one of the other ships, and it has to go back to Russia. Look, at least they hit this one.
Yeah.
At least they hit this one. They did some like ship's boat races too, but they're getting up to. Yes, the ship's boat races went poorly too. Everything this fleet does goes bad. Like, also by now we're up to like 20 pairs of binoculars thrown off the ship.
Yeah.
Rossesvensky's beat like 4 people within an inch of their lives. Like, his aides literally had to get a new box of binoculars in Madagascar.
Yeah. I was about to say, how many binoculars did they bring with them?
They brought like 25, and they had to buy more.
Is that normal, or
apparently it was kind of normal?
Okay. Because I was thinking maybe it was just a special occasion for this particular admiral.
Well, because he, like I said, he couldn't like hit people.
Yeah.
He couldn't do like violence against his fellow men, so he would like throw binoculars. He like threw his sword at a guy once, like in a sheath. Like he just took it off and threw it at a guy. He would scream at people. Normal stuff that well-adjusted humans do.
Right.
And by the time they get to where they're going, well, spoilers, they don't actually get there. But they get to kinda by Japan. And then the Japanese Navy comes out to fight them. And I will say, it is probably the greatest accomplishment of any Russian admiral, maybe to date, that Admiral Rossesvensky actually gets this fleet in a state where it could fight a battle and like not get completely slaughtered.
Yeah.
Because they fight the Battle of Tsushima in early 1905, I want to say. And yeah, they lose. And they lose in kind of embarrassing fashion. But considering the fact that a month ago they had to throw 2,000 opium cigarettes in the harbor and kill a snake with a sword, that's pretty good.
Yeah. And they were a battleship down because they had...
Yeah, they hit one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're also, like, half the ships were older than me when they participated in the battle. They get absolutely slaughtered, obviously. And it's basically the death of this fleet that causes the Russians to sue for peace. But there's some interesting... I love that for me. There's some interesting ramifications from this battle. Namely, do you know who Isoroku Yamamoto is?
Mm-mm.
He was the head of the Japanese Navy in World War II. He is at this battle as a young man. And he was hit by a shell, a remarkable feat for the Russian gunnery to actually hit something.
Yeah.
Hit by a shell, and he lost his pinky and half of his ring finger on his left hand. If he had lost the whole ring finger, he would have been invalidated from Japanese military service as too disabled. But because he had half of the finger, he could stay in. So there's a world where if their gunnery is a little better, Isoroku Yamamoto is not in command in World War II. And that is perhaps the biggest historical ramification of this entire campaign, is it's a fun little story, and they almost kill Isoroku Yamamoto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's neat. I love this story. I'm perhaps not telling you it in the best way.
No, I think it's got a lot of misadventure in it.
Yeah. It's kind of like you ever been on like a really, really, really bad road trip.
Yeah.
It's like if the appellation Voyage of the Damned has ever been appropriate, it's in this case, because it's like everything just goes wrong. Like from the very moment, like dudes getting decapitated in train cars. You've got other ships hitting other ships. You got a guy going insane. Several people, in fact, going insane. Half the fleet's lungs are covered in tar. It's remarkable. And I do want to say it was this, or we were going to talk about the Battle of Cape Esperance today. This one's a lot more whimsical, especially in the ways I've presented it. Because, like, dude, I don't want to talk about, like, serious, like, oh, people died. It was a war memorial. I want to talk about Russians going insane in metal boxes.
Well, so did any Russian sailors die?
Oh, yeah, like all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, like almost all of them.
Really?
Yeah.
So all the ships
almost
ships sank?
all of them sank, yeah. A few smaller ships and a hospital ship would escape the Japanese Navy, but kind of by luck because of fog, mostly. Rossesvensky would be fatally wounded and would have to be fished out of the water by that hospital ship, and he would die before he made it back to Russia. So the Tsar then sued for peace and kind of just gave the Japanese whatever they wanted. But this is kind of an exercise in something that's cited frequently, that the Russian Navy just sucks. It hasn't been good, like, maybe ever. And this is one of the principal reasons it hasn't ever been good. I mean, it's like truly, to be fair, from an American perspective, we've had a really good Navy for like 200 years, right? Or actually, that's an overstatement. We've had a really good Navy for like 100 years and a competent Navy for like 150, right? So we have stuff like in our history we can go back and reference, right? Especially me, someone who loves boats and ships. I can go back and be like, oh yeah, we should really learn from Bull Halsey's performance at the Battle of Midway in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Russian, what do you learn from this? Like, what do you possibly learn from this entire endeavor?
It's a teachable moment, you know, about mental fortitude, being well adjusted, not spending all your money on
opium.
Yeah, or
the perils of drug addiction.
Yeah,
the value of meritocracy, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm sure that they gave scientists of that age a lot to study when it came to black lung and all sorts of cancerous growths that can grow in the human lungs.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, we could have learned something about snake bites.
Maybe we did. I don't know.
I mean, the guy died, so
yeah. I think more than anything, it's a social experiment.
Yeah.
You know, how long can you keep 1,000 people out at sea before they just absolutely lose their minds? And
turns out the answer is about 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, all things considered, I think that's. I mean, I couldn't do much better.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, in some ways, it is admirable.
Yeah.
It's like a feat of like perseverance, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a good thing I'm not in the Navy.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I would not do very well.
I will say I'm fascinated by boats and ships and their doings and goings on. I'm terrified of the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, terrified of it. I hate it. It's like the eldritch evil from which we emerged 200 million years ago, and we just kind of float around in it now sometimes.
It's ironic. Because you have a basically an endless expanse of ocean, and sitting on top of it, you're cooped up in
a small metal box, basically.
Yep. Yeah. Delightful.
Yeah.
Truly a delightful experience.
Well, and ships at this time were small. If you've seen like a modern aircraft carrier, we're talking ships that are like a third the size of that.
Wow.
So they're a small metal box, and you're sleeping in coffin racks, basically.
I mean, I've toured aircraft carriers. They are not...
No, they're not big.
Yeah, they're not very big.
The living space is not large.
I mean, I guess people were a little smaller, but not enough to justify...
And they are Russians, so they're not small people necessarily. I know Rossisvensky was like 6'3", which was remarkable for the time, but I fear we're running out of time. I've been known to ramble. I don't know if you could tell. Next time, we're going to talk about something far less interesting, so I might not drag you into it.
Well.
Or I'll have you in the booth, and you'll talk at me whenever you feel like it.
We'll see. Yeah.
Next time probably will be Cape Esperance, and that's a little bit of a heavier topic. But today's light. I don't have the stamina for something heavy like Cape Esperance, so we talked about one of my favorite little fun naval escapades. Maybe we'll talk about the Battle of Hampton Roads sometime. That's another fun little escapade that ends poorly for everyone. But this has been probably the first episode. Yeah, it'll be the first episode of Tales from Davy Jones' Locker. Riley, you have any thoughts you want to leave with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I'm glad I'm not in the Navy.
Yeah, glad you're not in the Navy.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.